The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, it's Perch. I've got nothing. That's just it. It's hey, Perch. Writers don't matter. Okay. Let's read this mail. It says, "Hey Perch, over the past decade or so, modern American comics, I've kind of come to the conclusion that comic writer, the writer who only writes, is completely pointless. This wasn't always true, but as things stand in comics today, it sure seems to be true. This isn't even really to say that every modern comic book writer is shit, but most of them sure seem to be." You like the new inflection I'm trying to put in. I'm trying to kind of juice up the mails here a little bit. Anyway, it's not even completely an issue of bad stories or dialogue, although that's certainly an issue, but of just badly constructed, undynamic comic book stories where characters are just sitting around not doing anything for almost whole issues. Seems to me Marvel and DC could just give things over completely to the artist and cut out a whole extra person they need to pay. And what's the worry? That the artist is going to turn out worse than the book that so many writers are on now? Even if they're all so badly written, they'd probably be more interesting reads as comics than most comics at the moment. I guess there's always the worry of another Image thing happening, but that seems a pretty stupid worry to have when Marvel basically had the same thing happen to them in the 2000s with all their hot writers too. I've never really understood Marvel as a company being pissed about that Image thing anyways, when they had more talented artists waiting in the wings to take over anyways. I like Jim Lee on X-Men, but I'll take Adam Kubert or Chris Bachalo doing X-Men stuff afterwards over Lee any day of the week. It also seems like a lot of current artists would rather be writing their own material anyway. What do you? What do me? What do I think? You seem to lean a little bit more writer-centric, but do you think we'd be getting better or at least more interesting comics today if Marvel and DC switched over to largely being artist-driven comics with artists writing their own series? So we've talked about writers and artists before on the channel. That's the mail, by the way. I need a good conclusion. Ta-da! All right. I think it's in an ideal world, it's a harmony. It's both, a strong writer or somebody with strong writer skills and somebody with strong art skills coming together to tell a story together. I think that's the ideal scenario. I think you definitely have writers and artists in one, people who've done it both and do it well. But it cuts both ways. I mean, there's a lot of artists, as we've seen, who are not good writers. And there's, certainly writers who are not good artists. I mean, look, Chip Zdarsky, shitty artist. No, I'm kidding. Chip Zdarsky, of course, worked with Matt Fraction, does draw, of course. Sean Murphy, terrible writer. No, I'm kidding, Sean. I'm kidding. No, you do have people who can do both. And I think, obviously I've talked to him. I enjoy Sean Murphy's work as writer and artist. I enjoy John Byrne's work as writer and artist. I enjoy Frank Miller's work as writer and artist. All three of those individuals started out as artists. I think Frank Miller, is that truly the Frank Miller origin story? I'm not sure, actually. I think he may have started out more in the center. We know him from the big two, but a little bit further back. Now I'm looking. Anyway. In general, no, it's better when it's a marriage. The problem is not cut out the writers, it's cut out the poor writers. I think, I've talked about the symptom of why we see the writers, some of the writing the way it is right now. The reason is, the writers who are on the books today are given kind of short-term contracts, and I keep hitting that point over and over. And it's not to say, oh boy, we just need to give these people more money. If only they had more money. It's not that, although I do think there's an aspect of you get what you pay for. But if you think about a writer, if you think about the writers you love in comics, the ones who have done amazing work over the years, Chris Claremont always comes up like, whoa, what an incredible writer. Okay, well, one of the things he had going for him, and you could see this from when he worked on other things, when he worked on comics outside the X-Men, writers need longer runs. They need longer, stories to tell. When they do that, they do better. And I mean, it's easy to understand why. They have more time to kind of set up, the beats of the story, to build to a crescendo, to do all these kinds of things. But if the writer is told basically, hey, we're putting you on this for 3 issues, maybe 6 issues, and if things go really well, then then maybe we'll extend it to another 6 issues. Look, I think that everyone inherently knows, or should know, that if they do a shit job, they're going to get fired. So the idea of stringing it out 6 issues at a time, I think, is stupid. If a writer is told, like, hey, look, we're gonna go ahead and we think we're gonna put you on this title for 3 years, and then the writer proceeds to write, unsellable shit for 4 issues, the comic publisher could always come in and go, you know what, we're going to break the contract. Fuck it. We're going to pay, a termination fee, whatever it happens to be. And we're out because this sucks. Which is true, by the way, of any of you listening in your job. If you go in and you do a complete shit job, it doesn't matter. Put it this way. If you think about big corporations, if you think about doctors, if you think about lawyers, if you think about lawyers is the best example. If you think about a kind of a salary job, teacher job, imagine a teacher who comes into a school and they tell that teacher, all right, we're going to give you a 1 month contract. And if you teach the kids good, then we'll do a 2 month. Then we'll extend for another month. And then we'll just keep extending month by month. You would get shitty education because the teachers would start, they basically would either, have very little job commitment. So you'd get poor work, or they would try and, just basically spike the grades or, juice the grades every month unnaturally, because they're just desperately trying to, like, well, I just got to survive 1 month to get to the next month so I can get to the next month. That doesn't build a good education. The teachers in school, ones that do a good job, set up a foundation that carries for the year with themes, and like, we're going to do this module and that's going to unlock this kind of learning idea, and it's going to get over here. And again, same thing with a doctor. Can you imagine a doctor working at a clinic or a practice or a hospital, and they're like, well, we're going to give you a 3-month contract, and if you save enough lives, and then we'll go ahead and we'll extend it for another 3 months? That would be absurd. That's how comics work, though. It's we're going to give you a slow, just a quick little job and then another job. Well, if you're an artist, you draw your heart out and you do the best you can on the page and you call it a day. Try to be professional. It's relatively simple. If you're a writer, you're trying to kind of weirdly get attention and stunts, or you just don't care, or again, you just have so little attachment to your job, you just start writing for your pals on Twitter versus trying to do anything. So the short-term contracts are terrible, and it is leading to this problem. It's absolutely linked to this problem. You need to give people longer-term contracts. And again, if that teacher does a shitty job teaching, if the doctor, kills people or does a bad job, they're going to get fired, even if they have an ongoing regular contract. Right now, if you're working in a job, chances are you've got a ongoing contract. You just got a contract to do work. And they, if your boss probably talks about yearly reviews and working towards your bonus and stock incentives and all that other kind of stuff, depending on where you're working. But one thing that doesn't happen is you don't go into work every day with like, you got 1 month left on your contract, and then we'll see if we want to renew it for another 3 months. That's not common. Certain jobs, construction can kind of work that way. I mentioned lawyers. Lawyers, if you're working in a practice, obviously have a full-time job. But I mean, there's certainly freelance stuff. And comic writers are freelance. But it didn't used to work that way. And I've argued with somebody recently, like, yeah, that's how it's always worked. No, it is not. Comic writers inherently knew that if the story didn't sell or if it didn't work well, then, they'd be taken off of it, for sure. But there wasn't this very direct message of, hey, we're going to hire you to do, The Flash, and we're going to hire you in little 3-month increments at a time or 6-month increments at a time. That's not normal, and it's not natural, and you don't get the best work. And so I think that's what you got here. And it makes sense why that practice would hit writers more than artists, why the artists kind of can still thrive under that system, and the writers, it blows it. So that's my answer to you. I don't want to see a return to no writers at all, just artists, because quite bluntly, there are artists who don't do a great job, drawing. And I think there are quality writers out there. And I always think it's not A or B question. It's not like, well, we want to keep the writers or dump all the writers. No, I mean, there's a very obvious, option 3, which is get quality writers and get them stable and have them write long runs, and the business will be good. And the craziest part about that is that it's not a revolutionary idea. It's pretty much the boring old idea. It's how things have worked. It turns out if you don't hang cancellation over someone's head on a constant basis, they turn out better quality material. Shocking. Anybody in the world would tell you the same thing. So anyway, that's kind of my take on it. I if you ask me, and I've done this video before, which I didn't go into answering it this time. The artist is what people are going to remember more often than not over the writing. So you can make an argument the artist is more important to the book. But if you look at the really quality books, if you look at the stuff that you really remember over time, the stuff that, lasts decades, whether it's, John Byrne on Chris Claremont and the Dark Phoenix Saga, or whether it's, Watchmen, or kind of any big series that you remember, it has a writer and an artist on it. Almost always. Would you take, Mark Grunwald off of Captain America? I mean, of course you wouldn't. Would you take Jim Shooter off of some of that Legion of Superheroes stuff that he did? I mean, but why would you do that? That'd be crazy. So, push for quality writers. It's not an impossible job. But, if you basically make their job disposable and meaningless, you're going to get disposable and meaningless writing. That's natural consequence. Anyway, what say you? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. Ring that bell for the notifications. It will be great. And thanks for listening.